Cari amici di Visione TV, benvenuti a un nostro nuovo appuntamento e più che altro è uno speciale che oggi vi offriamo perché abbiamo il piacere e l'onore di avere in collegamento con noi il dottor Vladimir Zelenko. Buonasera dottor Zelenko, grazie per essere con noi.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Grazie mille per avermi invitato.
Ecco, c'è Guia Mariani che farà da interprete. Grazie Guia per averci dato l'opportunità di sentire il dottor Zelenko.
Grazie, un piacere. Spero di fare un buon lavoro.
Bene, intanto per i pochi che non lo sapessero, il dottor Zelenko è uno dei medici più famosi al mondo ed è colui il quale ha curato il presidente degli Stati Uniti Donald Trump una volta che il Covid lo ha raggiunto. È una figura che è stata naturalmente attaccata dal mainstream che individua soltanto un solo modello di cure fondato sui vaccini. La prima domanda che voglio fare al dottor Zelenko è questa. A distanza di 1 anno e mezzo dall'inizio di questa pandemia, che è stata raccontata dai media con molta enfasi, con molta preoccupazione, ci hanno detto che il vaccino era l'unica soluzione per uscire da questa tragedia, però non solo non ne siamo usciti, ma la situazione, se è possibile, peggiora. Qual è la sua opinione al riguardo?
So after a year and a half, we have been told by the mainstream media mostly that the only way out was to get this vaccine. But now it seems like we're far from that outcome. What is your opinion about this?
The solution for this problem is based on common sense. I was the first doctor in America forced to deal with a major outbreak of COVID in an outpatient setting in upstate New York. We had thousands of sick patients. And with God's help, we developed a very effective strategy that was based on common sense, that if you treat people earlier and you identify patients that are most at risk of having complications, and if you start immediate antiviral treatment, they all get better. So okay. That was an obvious solution. And it's been, my data showed an 85% reduction in death and hospitalization. That's been corroborated dozens of times by other peer-reviewed studies. So the solution first is to deal with the problem before it gets out of control. Now, I'm not against vaccines, but I have to make sure that the vaccines are safe, that they work, and that we need them. And under that type of analysis, all the COVID-19 vaccines fail, and we can go into detail why that is. So if there was a good COVID vaccine that could prevent infections and it was safe, I would be in support of it. However, that's not the case. So what we really have is effective pre-hospital treatment and also prophylaxis and prevention that could prevent high-risk patients from getting sick.
Ok, allora la soluzione a questo problema è soprattutto il buon senso, il prevenire che la gente vada in ospedale e quindi fermare al più presto la malattia.
Dottor Zelenko, come spiega l'astio di tutto il sistema mediatico mondiale, non solo occidentale, ma di tutti i colossi informativi che dominano la comunicazione contro l'idea stessa di poter investire sulle cure? Cioè chiunque ha provato a curare la gente o con il plasma iperimmune o con l'idrossiclorochina o con qualsiasi altro rimedio è stato subito bollato come un pericoloso scienziato pazzo, nemico della scienza. Per quale motivo hanno tutti sposato questa linea?
Okay, how do you explain the hostility from all the mainstream media? And scusa, poi la domanda alla fine mi hai chiesto quindi che cosa...
per quale motivo tutti quelli che hanno provato a puntare sulle cure sono stati demonizzati, qualunque tipo di cura avessero provato a mettere in piedi, dal plasma iperimmune all'idrossiclorochina? Cioè è chiaro che c'è stato un accanimento scientifico contro l'idea stessa di individuare delle cure. Perché secondo lui?
There has been like this total aggression towards all those who propose the treatments. How do you explain this?
So it's hard to explain unless you look at the world through the glasses of Stalin. because if you look at the world through the eyes of a decent human being, it will be very difficult to actually understand the dynamics at play. But I'll tell you a story about Stalin, and then go and answer your question. Stalin wanted to build a canal for ships from Moscow to another city. He used the Gulag prisoners to do it. 400,000 died. Their corpses were thrown into the cement, and they were permanently encased and entombed in the canal. And after the canal was finished, it was too shallow. No ship ever used it. So the question was, why was it built? And the answer was so that 400,000 people would die. To really understand what's going on now, why don't you translate this story?
Ok, è difficile da spiegare a meno che non guardi il mondo attraverso gli occhiali di Stalin.
Ecco, mi pare molto chiaro.
Let me explain.
Prego, prego.
Che puoi spiegare?
So, everything I'm going to say, I don't want the audience to believe. I want them to listen, and maybe write it down, and then do their own research. Don't make the same mistake with me as you do with the government, and believe things blindly. I think it's your responsibility to take information being presented and use your mind and use your powers of deductive reasoning, and figure out if it's true and if it's not. And everything I'm going to say, I'm going to document and give you sources for the basis of what I'm saying, so that you can go and investigate that information. I think it's very important, because otherwise people are led astray and reach the wrong conclusions. Why don't you translate that first?
Quindi io tutto quello che vi dirò qui è che io desidero che l'audience, il tuo pubblico, non creda alle mie parole, voglio che lo mettano in questione e che vadano a trovare le informazioni che io vi presenterò, in modo tale che possano loro stessi verificare la vericità di quello che io vi dico. E questo è molto importante. Tutto quello che io vi darò, anche le fonti, e mi piacerebbe che poi voi poteste andare a fare le vostre investigazioni, perché non dovete solo credere, dovete verificare voi stessi.
COVID-19 is an artificially made bioweapon, a weapon of mass destruction.
Il Covid-19 è un'arma di distruzione di massa.
No one even is debating that anymore. And the reason we know this is that there's a very clearly documented patent trail that illustrates the progression and development of this weapon. The way it started was in 1999 in the University of North Carolina. Dr. Ralph Barrick took a bat coronavirus, modified a surface protein on it, and made it infect human beings. And then we have a patent number associated with that technology of how to transform an animal virus to a human infecting virus.
Ok, come abbiamo detto, questa è un'arma biologica e non lo dico io, c'è un trail, una serie di patent, tutto un tragitto di brevetti che dimostrano questo sviluppo. Nel 1999 nell'Università della North Carolina, Barrick, he works with Fauci, right?
Ralph Barrick, yeah, he was a colleague.
È un collega di Fauci, Ralph Barrick, ha modificato un virus di pipistrello e lo ha modificato per renderlo più potente, e abbiamo proprio il numero del patent, come si chiama, Francesco, il patent?
Del brevetto, vuoi dire?
Brevetto, ok, non so se si dice anche in italiano patent.
Sì.
Okay.
That's only part of the transition. In 2015, Dr. Ralph Barrick and Dr. Zheng from the Wuhan laboratory in China worked together, funded by the NIH, and published a paper of how to take a virus, bat coronavirus, which now infects human beings, and to increase its destructive effects on the lungs of a human being, and also to cause blood clots. That's what's called gain of function research. They gave new function. They created a weapon of mass destruction. And that was in 2015. And then there are several patents associated with that paper that show how to transform a benign virus to a lung-killing, blood-clotting causing virus in human beings.
Questo è solo parte della transizione che poi arrivò anche fino ad arrivare al 2015, dove Barak and Xing is a Chinese
Zheng, yeah. Z-H-E-N-G.
Ok, è un dottore cinese, sono stati finanziati dalla NIH americana, che è la National Institute of Health, del quale Fauci è direttore, ha finanziato come prendere un virus di pipistrello e incrementarne gli effetti negativi, distruttivi sui polmoni e causare anche i trombi, cioè i famosi coaguli di sangue. Questa qua è la famosa gain of function, il guadagno di funzione. Ci sono diversi brevetti associati a questo documento.
And so when this virus was released as a weapon with a very, very specific agenda, which was to scare every human being, that every single human being should live in fear, lock down the economies and isolate people from other people. And that is a form of psychological warfare. If you induce fear over time and you isolate a human being from the people they love, all the data shows that a person will psychologically decompensate. And basically that's how they caused mass psychosis.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Quando è stato rilasciato questo virus proprio come arma per una specifica agenda, che era quella di spaventare ogni umano e che ogni umano dovesse vivere nella paura, doveva essere isolato anche dalla propria professione, non solo dalle persone, perché questa è una forma di guerra psicologica che induce, fatta apposta per indurre la paura e l'isolamento, perché tutti i dati dimostrano che questa strategia scompensa in una maniera molto profonda le persone.
And the fear has a very specific agenda, which is to motivate billions of people to do something that they ordinarily would not want to do. For example, taking an experimental vaccine. And so before we go into the vaccine, if my stipulation is correct, that the real weapon here is the induction of fear and psychological warfare, then you do understand that anything that weakens the fear, anything that helps people calm down and get reintegrated back into society will be a weapon against their weapon. It will be vilified. So that's why, for example, when hydroxychloroquine showed an 85% reduction in death, and ivermectin showed the same thing, and monoclonal antibodies and early treatment, whenever there was anything that made sense, whenever there was anything that could actually help people reduce the severity of this illness and help people get back to being psychologically normal and reintegrate into society, was immediately suppressed.
Ok, allora, quindi cosa vuol dire questo? Che se l'arma era quella di indurre la paura e mantenere le persone sotto una, diciamo un incantesimo di paura, perché c'era un motivo preciso. Questa specifica agenda era di motivare miliardi di persone che normalmente non farebbero cose tipo prendere un vaccino sperimentale. Quindi se la mia valutazione è corretta, allora capiamo perché fanno di tutto per evitare che la gente smetta di avere paura. tipo i trattamenti tipo l'idrossiclorochino, l'ivermectino, qualunque altra cura che poteva diminuire l'ansia tra la gente, non andava bene, per loro era un problema, loro vogliono mantenere la paura alta. Quindi non hanno fatto vedere che c'erano le cure, e non volevano far vedere che esiste anche il buon senso e non volevano reintegrare le persone alla loro vita normale.
For example, I'll give you a very simple proof. In Australia, they made illegal ivermectin use, not because it doesn't work, but because it causes vaccine hesitancy. In other words, it prevents or it causes many people not to want to take the vaccine because they have something that could treat their infection and they get better. So the Australian government is telling you outright, you cannot use ivermectin because it prevents some people from going to take the vaccine.
Per esempio, vi do una prova molto semplice che è successo in Australia. Avevano impedito la commercializzazione
che trovo particolarmente brillante. Lei prima diceva, dottore, vogliono tenere la gente in uno stato di paura perché la paura colpisce le persone, le scompensa, elimina evidentemente la loro capacità di ragionare. Ma il loro obiettivo è farli vaccinare con questi vaccini a mRNA perché sanno che questi vaccini producono sul corpo dei vaccinati degli effetti che loro perseguono, oppure loro vogliono terrorizzare la gente per finalità di riequilibrio politico e sociale, cioè per cambiare la società e il modello politico. Quale delle due è vera o entrambe?
Okay, so he finds extremely brilliant your observations. So, and he asks, they want to keep people in fear. Why? Is it the objective just to vaccinate them with maybe even dangerous things? Or is it they want to terrorize people for political and social re-engineering? Or for both reasons?
It's a war against God.
It's so true. Against logic.
It's a war against the Creator. It's two systems of thought colliding and cannot coexist anymore. There's the one system or one approach where human beings believe we're made in God's image and our lives have sanctity and we have human rights, and it's within God's department how many of us belong on the planet and how long we should live. And there's another system of thought that is the exact opposite of that and functions in power and enslavement. And these are the history of all totalitarian regimes, that the first thing they want to do is get rid of religion or houses of worship. Because if I'm bowing down to God, I'm not going to bow down to them.
Can I translate this, please? Vedi, è una guerra contro Dio e contro il nostro creatore. Ci sono due sistemi di pensiero che sono in collisione in questo momento. C'è un sistema dove noi crediamo di essere fatti. Un attimo, Francesco, mi si sta scaricando la batteria del computer, arrivo subito.
Bene, intanto io insomma non so cosa, ci possiamo solo guardare negli occhi perché io, diciamo, il mio inglese non credo che sia utile per proseguire in piena autonomia questa intervista. Ecco, spero che Guia abbia il caricabatterie insomma nelle vicinanze, mi auguro di sì. In ogni caso il dottor Zelenko fino adesso ha offerto, a mio avviso, un quadro chiarissimo, esaustivo, non solo dal punto di vista scientifico ma anche politico, e direi di più anche un'ermeneutica, una interpretazione lucidissima di quello che sta accadendo, unendo in maniera davvero mirabile aspetti medici, aspetti filosofici e aspetti anche esoterici che sono tipici di questa categoria di persone che dominano l'umanità attraverso la paura, e l'utilizzo della paura come strumento per dominare le masse è sicuramente voluto, studiato e mai casuale. Non so se Guia è tornata. Guia, sei con noi?
I'm here, I'm back.
Ecco qui, meno male, insomma, perché sai che il mio inglese mi consente 12 secondi di autonomia.
Ok.
Ecco, senti, puoi chiedere al dottor Zelenko, abbiamo capito qual è la finalità, cioè lui di fatto dice questi uomini odiano la creazione, è una lotta contro Dio, vogliono vogliono sfidare la creazione, l'ordine naturale per come imposto da un dio della trascendenza, perché sono di fatto, diciamo, animati da istinti luciferini, e noi siamo d'accordo con questo. Lui prima diceva, Fauci di fatto ha finanziato questi giochi di guadagno di funzione per potenziare i virus naturali e renderli più pericolosi. Ecco, se Fauci è l'esecutore materiale di questo piano, i mandanti chi sono?
So yes, he agrees with you that there is a power structure that wants to defy the natural order, and because these people are animated by satanic drives. So he also said that Fauci was the one financing this research. Okay, sorry, and he asked, but who are the people behind Fauci that are asking him to finance this research and produce this? Or is he part of it?
You know, those are not doctor questions, but I don't mind. I have my thinking mind, so I could come through some observations. So, for example, in order to be able to do this effectively, to pull off the worst crime in human history, what I call exercise in eugenics or crimes against humanity, mass murder, genocide, whatever term you like. But you need control over different sectors of life. So, for example, you obviously need control over the media, both mainstream and social media, because he who controls the airwaves controls the narrative, controls what people hear, what people see, and by doing so, you can manipulate their thought processes and paint a picture of reality that you want them to see, not the truth. So the media is one important component of it. The other was academia, because academia was responsible for all the fraud, all the fraudulent papers and gave the media all the information they needed, the content of the false narrative. And I can go through all the fraudulent papers and results. For example, the Lancet study, which was retracted, that showed that hydroxychloroquine kills people. It was so influential, this study, that the World Health Organization stopped using hydroxychloroquine all around the world. There was only one problem with that study: it was fraud. It was based on data that didn't exist, and Lancet, in the biggest scandal in the history of medicine, had to retract this fraudulent study. But the damage had been done. So what I'm showing you is that academia was very much complicit in giving the media the false narrative that they needed. Then obviously you need control of the politicians, because you need the politicians to enact policies of tyranny based on the fraudulent data and the false narrative. And then you obviously need money, and you need the industries that could finance the pharmaceutical industry and many other industries that could finance such activities. And why don't you translate, please?
Ok, allora, queste non sono domande da dottori, però io ho i miei pareri. Questo è il peggior
No, I want to continue. I want to develop the idea.
Vuole sviluppare l'idea?
Prego, prego, ok.
If you look at the ownership structure of most corporations in the world, when you get down to their major holders, the owners, it comes down to two companies called the Vanguard and BlackRock. And what's interesting about those two companies, they both invest in each other. So they own each other. So think in some ways that Vanguard and BlackRock are one company, one monopoly. So for example, they own Pepsi and Coca-Cola. In other words, and they own around $20 trillion of assets. And so wherever you're gonna, whatever sector you wanna manipulate, you need to have a stakeholders or ownership share in those sectors in order to be able to influence them. And there's only really a few companies in the world that have that power, have power over academia through endowments, have power over the media, they own the media, have power over the politicians through many many types of ways of sending money to politicians or threatening them, let's say, and so on. So the question comes down to who owns BlackRock and Vanguard, or the majority, because these are the most powerful Goliath companies in the world, and they own literally everything. And so the data shows that 70% of the corporate wealth in the world is owned by 150 people.
Okay, 150 people? Ok, quindi se guardate...
Senti, prego, prego.
Now, who really owns those things? It's going to be a combination, in my opinion, of old money and new money. The obvious suspects, the ones that are easy to pick out, are like Bill Gates, George Soros, Zuckerberg, Bezos, and the guy from the World, Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum, and so on. And there are many others, I'm sure, that are the new rich, you know, have multiple billions of dollars and so on, who believe, and this is really the belief of these, what I call devolved pagans, is that they believe that they have reached a certain new level of consciousness and understanding of existence that allows them, or gives them the right to enslave others and to decide who should live and who should die. It's a certain type of pagan mentality that is a direct insult and attack on God consciousness.
Sì. Allora, chi sono queste 150 persone?
Queste persone di fatto stanno portando avanti un attacco al cuore del cristianesimo.
These persons are, do you think they are directly attacking the heart of Christianity?
I think all religions have been hijacked. I think that any organizational structure has essentially become a vehicle for Satan, for the devil. I think this is. I'm not going to go into the details because I don't really understand the Vatican or the church hierarchy, but it wouldn't surprise me that there is a corrupt component to it, like any other huge organization that controls billions of dollars of assets, including rabbinic organizations and many other religious organizations. I think that what's happened is that we need a complete collapse of existing institutions and the rebuilding. I'm a globalist, you know, I believe that God is the King of Kings, he's the true global leader, and we need a great reset to reset the world from paganism and idolatry and child sacrifice to one of God consciousness. And then we'll build back better a society where truth, the true narrative, is the basis of existence, not falsehood. So, yeah, what you translate?
Yes, it's complicated. Ok, io non voglio entrare nei dettagli del Vaticano, collettiva, divina. You said at the last part, which can be this collective divine conscious, world conscious, should be the basis
of existence and of reality, of the
yeah.
new world order.
Of the new world order. I am a globalist like you then. E lui questo crede che dovrebbe essere la base, questa la base del nuovo ordine mondiale. Ci vuole un nuovo ordine mondiale, ma così.
Ma non deve essere un ordine contro Dio, dice, come quello che hanno messo in piedi queste persone.
Esatto, deve essere un ordine nel quale Dio è centrale.
Senti, Lui prima ha detto che questo è un genocidio, ha usato un'immagine molto forte, ma è un genocidio perché questo tipo di sperimentazione di massa è proprio pensata per diminuire il numero complessivo della popolazione, cioè questo tipo di sierogenico inoculato a miliardi di persone è solo inefficace o è anche pensato per generare in prospettiva un aumento della mortalità complessiva e una diminuzione della popolazione in generale? Cioè, è solo inefficace o è pensato anche per fare questo tipo di scrematura?
So you said before that this is a genocide, which is a very strong statement. But but do you think it has been actually been designed to cause depopulation, or has it just been a failure? And it wasn't done on purpose. Do you think it has been designed to cause mass depopulation or a genocide?
It's not about what I believe. I can just give you the evidence.
Okay.
And people can come to their own beliefs. In 2015, Bill Gates at a TED lecture said that the world population needs to be reduced by 15%, that's 1 billion people, because of global warming. And how are we going to accomplish this? Through the use of vaccines. The same sociopath in 2020 said that 7 billion people need to be vaccinated. So I'm going to ask a question. Why would I take a vaccine for my health that's paid for and advocated for by someone who wants to reduce the world population?
Excellent, let me translate it. Ok, io non vi do un'idea, io vi voglio dare l'evidenza. Nel 2015
Insomma, ci vuole un bel coraggio.
You need a lot of courage to do that.
And another point, in October of 2020, last year, the FDA made a presentation to its internally to its own scientists about the vaccines. And on slide 16 of that presentation, they listed all the side effects. Now, this is in October, 2 months before the vaccines were rolled out on the world stage. So this is 2 months, 60 days at least before, and the list includes, and I'll forward it to you, death, strokes, heart attacks, seizures, Bell's palsy, multiple sclerosis, Guillain-Barré syndrome, and many other very unpleasant things. Now, it's important what I'm about to tell you. If you look at the VAERS database, which is the United States system called Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. It's the platform that allows for doctors and patients to file reports about the side effects that they're experiencing. There was a 100% correlation match between what the FDA presented to its own scientists 2 months before the vaccines were given to people and what the people themselves reported that they were experiencing. What that shows is the following, that this is premeditated mass murder. This is not, oops, we made a mistake. This is something we knew exactly what it's going to do. We released it, we lied to you and said that it's safe, and it's exactly what it did. So in America, go ahead, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Ok, allora adesso vi do un altro punto molto importante.
So the side effects of these vaccines that we've seen, the most concerning of the following, that within the first 3 months, people get blood clots that cause heart attacks and strokes. It also causes myocarditis, which is the destruction of the heart muscle in young adults. That's why you see so many athletes and soccer players just dropping dead. And also increases miscarriage rates in first trimester pregnancies from 10% to 82%. That's just in the first 3 months. And that's not to even include the increases in cancer that we're seeing, increases in autoimmune diseases, ovarian dysfunction, and most likely infertility. So these are just some of the side effects and the long-term health effects that we're seeing. Why don't you translate?
Allora, i primi 3 mesi, ok, quindi gli eventi avversi di questi vaccini sono che nei primi, quella importante era anche hanno visto infertilità.
Okay, so that's just the safety component. Let's see if these vaccines work. So the way to do that is you look at the 3 most immunized countries in the world: Israel, Gibraltar, and a nation called Seychelles in the Indian Ocean. All of them have vaccine rates more than 85%, and all of them are having huge problems with different variant outbreaks like Delta variant. It's the worst in the world. So the question is, why are these countries who have vaccinated the majority of their citizens still dealing with COVID? Shouldn't they be protected?
Quindi poi e questo abbiamo parlato della parte di la sicurezza, ma adesso vediamo la variante Delta.
Now, so it doesn't work in my opinion, and it's not safe. But the most important consideration is something else. Do we need it? If you look, if we look through different demographics, if you look at healthy children, 18 and under, the CDC says their chances of survival from COVID with no treatment is 99.998%. 99.998%. That's better than influenza virus, meaning COVID is safer in kids than flu. And so why would I vaccinate a child with a substance that doesn't work, but also has these horrific side effects, for something that the child has a almost 100% chance of recovery with no treatment?
Allora, ora la mia opinione è che non funzionano e non è sicuro questi vaccini, ma la cosa più importante è bisogna capire se davvero ne abbiamo bisogno. Allora, vediamo.
So it's not for medical reasons. The children are not getting vaccinated for medical reasons because there's no medical need for it. Listen, just because I know how to cut off a hand doesn't mean that I have to cut off a hand if someone comes in with a runny nose. Meaning, I have to know when to use what, and not use it just because I can. So even if we did have a good vaccine, which we don't, but the children don't need it. Now, let's take another group. People that had COVID and have antibodies. Those antibodies, all the papers show, is like 100 times better than the antibodies made by the vaccines. So why would I give a group of people that have the best antibodies possible from your God-given immune system, and why would I inject them something with side effects to make weaker antibodies?
Sì, allora questo quindi possiamo dire senza alcun dubbio che non ci sono ragioni mediche per il quale vaccinare un vaccino anche a quelli che hanno già avuto il Covid.
Now, if you take the most important group of people are the older people or those with medical problems, because those are the patients that are most vulnerable to COVID. And if you look internationally, the data shows around 7.5% of those patients will die. That's not acceptable and that's horrific. However, we've developed treatment strategies that could reduce that percentage to less than 0.5%. Now, that's also a lot of people, but the question is, see, that's where the question will be, do they need a vaccine? And the answer is maybe yes, because they're the higher risk patients. However, the vaccine has to do more good than bad. The vaccines that we have now are killing more people than they're helping. In Taiwan, they just published a paper last month that the vaccine has killed more people than COVID. So my point is like this, that maybe the vaccines are medically necessary in the high-risk older population. However, the vaccines have to be vaccines of life, not vaccines of death. And
very nice. Lui dice Ora, se prendete il gruppo, diciamo, che è più importante dal punto di vista medico, è quello che hanno problemi medici e che sono vulnerabili.
Faccio un'ultima domanda perché so che deve lasciarci il dottor Zelenko, ma staremmo a sentirlo per ore perché le sue analisi sono davvero incisive e profonde. Abbiamo dipinto qual è la spectre che sta dominando questo mondo di tenebra. Cerchiamo di capire se c'è una resistenza di luce, ecco, un catecon che può frenare il male che dilaga. Di sicuro questo catecon non è Papa Francesco, che anzi è uno degli esecutori, dei player più decisi nel fomentare queste paure. Chi può aiutarci a uscire fuori da questa situazione? Il Partito Repubblicano Americano, ad esempio, Donald Trump, cioè qual è un puntello secondo lei che può arrestare questo male dilagante che sembra adesso invincibile, inarrestabile? Ecco, Monsignor Carlo Maria Viganò, ad esempio, non so se lui lo conosce.
Maybe Archbishop Vigano. I know you must know him. What could stop this? What can we do
So I'm very optimistic about the future. I think that what we're witnessing is a cleaning of the world, a kind of flood, like in the times of Noah, but it's a purifying flood. Let me explain. Every human being is being given a choice right now from God. And only you could make that choice for yourself. So the answer is the power is within each individual. And here's the question. Who are you going to bow down to? Are you going to bow down to your creator, the God who's making you every second, giving you life out of love, and making you all the time, and you're never alone, he's always with you? Or are you going to bow down to corrupt government, sociopathic oligarchs, and the false promise of this golden calf of the vaccine? Because this is really the choice. Are you going to bow down to God, or are you going to bow down to some cult or other human beings or forces of evil? The choice is yours. The choice is mine. And each individual right now is choosing. Some people giving into the fear and the isolation and running and bowing down to false gods. Other people are looking deeply into themselves, discovering new layers and levels of faith and trust in God, and turning to God and asking for support and strength and the fortitude to overcome the fear and so on. Each individual right now has an unbelievable opportunity to go away from bad and to stick to truth and good.
Stick to truth. Ok, lui si sente molto ottimista del futuro. Quello che stiamo vedendo è una pulizia del mondo, c'è un'ondata di purezza, perché in questo momento a ogni umano è data una scelta. Questa scelta è stata data da Dio e ognuno ha la possibilità di prendere questa scelta. Siamo davanti a questo video. La domanda per te è questa: davanti a chi ti vuoi inginocchiare? Davanti a Dio che ti crea ogni istante, che non ti lascia mai solo, che ti dà la forza nei momenti difficili, e che tutto quello che è intorno a noi, insomma, la verità divina, o al governo corrotto, a dei sociopatici oligarchi che ti promettono con il vitello falso d'oro la promessa la libertà del vaccino, ok? Vuoi inginocchiarti davanti a Dio o davanti a un culto? La scelta è tua, la scelta è mia. E adesso ognuno di noi sta scegliendo. Alcuni si guardano dentro in questo momento e stanno scoprendo nuova fede, stanno riscoprendo Dio che magari non l'avevano, che l'avevano lasciato un po' nei ricordi, stanno chiedendo supporto e forza di vincere la paura che è stata instillata dai globalisti, evidentemente. E quindi adesso ognuno di noi ha un'incredibile chance di ritrovare la verità.
Benissimo, sottoscrivo queste parole che trovo davvero alte e lucide. Grazie al dottor Zelenko, è stato veramente un grande onore averla con noi, speriamo di riaverla presto ai nostri microfoni.
So he underlines, he thinks, he shares every word that he says that he believes are extremely high and illuminated. Is that a word I can say? And it's been an extreme pleasure having you, and we wish you all the best, and hopefully we will have you again sometime.
Amen. And I just want a very short message to the Italian people. You come from thousands of years of civilization and history and tradition. You have the power within yourselves to say no to this evil. Do not give in to the fear, please. Do not give in to the isolation. Don't separate yourself from the people you love. Don't take the poison death shot. Just use common sense. Put your trust in God. And there are very cheap and effective, safe medications that could help you prevent and treat COVID if it happens. But don't destroy yourself by giving into the fear. And I promise you that God will protect your nation from all these deeply rooted evil forces. And very soon we'll all be living in a world of truth.
Okay. Io vorrei concludere lasciando un breve messaggio al popolo italiano. Voi venite da migliaia di anni di storia, di tradizioni, e avete il potere di dire no a quello che sta succedendo, di dire no alla paura. Non prendete questa puntura della morte. Ci sono tante cure poco costose e molto efficaci che posso come alternativa. Io vi dico, non distruggetevi abbracciando la paura, e vi prometto che Dio questo lo capirà e che avete la possibilità di ritornare di riabbracciare, insomma, la verità, la vita vera, ecco, di tornare alla verità profonda.
Grazie ancora, dottor Zelenko.
Very much.
Thank you.